I have people in the YouTube comments talking about how I look like an Eldar. I just do a little pop that one off. Pop that one off. I'm a human. Feel like I'm bald. Okay, now I'm really bald. We'll be a good old Cadian, okay? We're not some filthy Xeno scum. For Cadia. Ah! Can I please have my hair back? And I'm ready to fight for the Emperor. Eldar, they seem like they fucked up Omega big time. Is there anything likable about them? I don't know. I guess they're pretty smart if they made a webway. No. No. I must not give any excuses to the Xeno scum. Okay.
Guardsmen, I continue to inform you about the histories of various factions in our galaxy.
David.
The Xenos, about whom we shall discuss further, even given their scant numbers, are extremely dangerous and cunning. The Eldari, as they call themselves, physically and psychically exceed the strength of an ordinary human. The Eldar, or as they refer to themselves, the Eldari, an ancient humanoid and once powerful race that ruled the entire galaxy. Long before humanity began to emerge from caves in search of prey, the Eldar were already rightfully considered the most powerful race in the galaxy. However, such power also has its consequences. Pride took over the minds of tens of millions of Eldar, all of which led to a monstrous cataclysm that let out a terrible scream across the galaxy. The Eldar race was shattered into pieces. Now, these pitiful remnants of what was once a mighty people are on the brink of extinction. Yet they continue the fight against the horrors of the universe, adhering to harsh ritual disciplines and honing their martial skills.
Yeah, Eldari just inherited their daddy Old Ones travel maps, another insult against Necrons. I see. The Old Ones were like, here is this knowledge. We will give it to you. They should have just helped the Necrons. The Old Ones, they fucked up.
They fled aboard their craft worlds, gigantic spacecraft the size of a planet, and began calling themselves Asuryani. But even with their small numbers and fragmentation, the Eldar remain deadly and highly advanced enemies, rightfully feared by all.
Doesn't this look like this looks like AI, right? With all the smooth lines and stuff. Kind of looks cool.
Their army consists of specialized units, each of which is perfected in one of the arts of warfare. Rumors hold that if all the ranks of the Eldar army somehow begin to act together, then there will be no doubts about their complete victory. Physiologically, the Eldar are somewhat similar to humans, yet they are usually taller and slimmer, have elongated faces and pointed ears.
Not like me.
Thanks to a metabolism that occurs much faster than in humans, the Eldar have excellent agility and endurance, and a more advanced nervous and cardiovascular system give the
that's definitely not me.
Eldar high reaction speed. In the eyes of the Eldar, humans move slowly and utterly clumsily, whereas the Eldar themselves move with astonishing speed and grace in our perception. Another important difference between the...
Is the voiceover of this video AI? Oh yeah. No, the real David. Imagine David, a Warhammer fan? Mayhaps. But yeah, this is probably AI. Very enjoyable to listen to, though. It's like a nature documentary, but hell. Destination, hell.
The Eldar and humans is their lifespan. A typical Eldar, if they do not die from disease, an accident, or in war, can live for about 1,000 years.
Whoa.
However, some of them can extend their lifespan up to 10,000 years and beyond. All this occurs thanks to their well-developed psychic abilities,
Jesus Christ.
which also serve as the foundation for Eldar technology. There are also less significant differences. For instance, the Eldar exceed...
Hearing Sir David doing an animal documentary about the Tyranids would be insane. I'd love that. Wait, I wonder if this guy did. I don't know. Imperial Iterator. Maybe there is one about the Tyranids.
Humans mentally. This means that they experience all emotions much more sharply.
That's
But
right.
this superiority has a flip side. The feelings and emotions of the Eldar accumulate, which requires constant unloading in order to avoid overstrain and various breakdowns. One might
Oh.
even say that this is the crux of the problem with the Eldar. For them, all life sensations are available in an exaggerated degree, whether it be the acquisition of new knowledge, the excitement during battle, or any other pleasure or sensation. The Eldar are capable of reaching the peaks of success with the same ease as they can fall into the abyss of doubts and fears of failure. They might experience unearthly bliss or conversely suffer monstrous sorrow. In other words, for them, it is both a gift and a curse at the same time. And yet, how could it happen that such a highly spiritual, wise and strong people fell so low? To answer this question, let's turn to the history of the Eldar, starting with mythology. Before beginning, it should be mentioned that the mythology of the Eldar is an ancient force that creates the foundation of their history and culture, as well as unifies their race. These old myths describe the deeds of many of their gods. Of course, most of them were killed during the fall, with the exception of Cain, Segurak and Aisha, who is imprisoned by Nurgle. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. It is worth mentioning that
Nurgle has imprisoned a god? Nice. Bad. Cool? Nice.
there is a relatively new god named Inid. He is not part of the old mythology, but
Boobies? Okay.
his story is nonetheless very interesting. But let's continue. Long ago, the goddess of harvest Isha and the god of hunting Kurnus had two sons. They named one Eldanesh and the other Ulthanesh. The brothers became the first Eldar and laid the foundation for the entire race, which was later led by Eldanesh himself. Ulthanesh supported his brother, and under his leadership the Eldar achieved many victories over many
All this art looks like AI. Oh, probably is. Like the voice.
of the galaxy's nightmares. Initially, there were no disagreements between the brothers. Ulthanesh fully supported his brother and his house.
Uh-oh.
In turn, Eldanesh was happy with the help of the second, the greatest in strength among the Eldar. But soon, tension arose between them, and Eldanesh, unable to bear it, banished his brother into the desert.
Classic.
Perhaps everything could have ended well. However, the god of war Cain saw his advantage in the brothers' quarrel. Cain attempted to kill Ulthanesh by sending a poisonous scorpion to him, but the mortal Eldar managed to survive. Ulthanesh waited for his brother's help, but to his horror, did
No
not
worries,
receive
Koala.
it. Then he realized he no longer needed the protection of Eldanesh and founded his own house. Thus began the division of the Eldar.
Eldar are also traitors that made humans racists. The Eldar made the humans racists? It was inevitable. Humans make each other racist.
Subsequently, both houses would reunite, and once again Cain would be the reason for it. This happened in the following way. In those ancient times, there were no barriers between gods and mortals. Hard to believe,
They call
but
humans
the
monkeys?
gods walked among the Eldar,
Oh.
teaching and guiding them on the paths to an era of peace and prosperity.
They call us monkeys? Eldar Smelldar.
And then, one day, the goddess of luck and dreams, Lilith, had a dream that the Eldar would cause the terrible death of Cain, as a result of which the god of war would be torn into thousands of pieces.
Or?
For some time, Lilith hid this vision from him, but in the end she told him. Considering that Lilith is known for her prophetic dreams, the god of war took this news very seriously, and to avoid such a fate, he decided to strike first. Consequently, a massacre began, the scale of which is truly horrifying. Cain spared no one, his wrath was boundless. The earth goddess Isha could not simply watch as her children perished and asked the high god Asurion to intervene. He entered the warp just in time for another massacre and saw what Cain was doing. Asurion had no choice but to expel the Eldar from the warp and forever seal the barrier between the two dimensions. By doing so, he also severed the connections between the gods and the Eldar, forbidding the former from interfering in the lives of their mortal children.
Damn.
The war between the Eldar and the god of war was stopped, albeit temporarily. However, for Isha and her spouse Kurnus, the separation from their children was torture. They turned to the god of Smith's Wall, who agreed to help them. Joining forces, the three gods created special spirit stones, and with their help they continue to secretly teach and guide their children. Somehow the god of war, Cain,
Skinny
found
head.
out that the spouses, despite the prohibition, continued to communicate with the Eldar. He told Asurion about it. For him it was unpleasant news, as Asurion was on the side of the spouses. But Isha and Kurnus still violated his direct prohibition, and he had no choice but to punish the two gods. Reluctantly, Asurion handed the two gods over to Cain.
There's a reason he was called Kayla Mensha, Cain, the bloody-handed god. He's just killing a bunch of children. From where we are now, we might have a peace treaty with the Eldar after they revive Gilliman. We'll see, since they have more to lose than win. Thank you for reviving Julius Caesar. Now leave.
To let him do with them as he pleases. In his tortures of Isha and Kurnus, Cain spared no cruelty and employed all his terrible skills. Many of the gods secretly thought that Cain was going too far, but none of them dared to openly object. Only the god of smiths, Vol, was brave enough to publicly speak of their release. After some time, both deities came to an agreement. Cain would agree to release the spouses if Vol, exactly a year later and not a day more, provided him with exactly 100 swords. It's no wonder that Cain so valued Vol's work. It was believed that he was such a great master that even a single sword made by his hands was priceless. Any mortal Eldar with a Vol blade in hand could withstand an army of 1,000.
Would this be considered an artifact then? One of the swords made by the gods? That's what they're called, right? Artifacts? Or is the artifacts lost technology? Wouldn't relic fit better then? Oh, that's what I was thinking. Relic. The artifacts for Space King. Oh, the artifacts are for Space King. Oh, I was thinking... I had Space King on the mind, I suppose. Eldar can still invent and make tech. They are not ignorant humans. Okay.
After the deal was struck, Vol immediately set to work. Day by day he toiled, never resting in his forge. But to his misfortune, by the year's end he had made only 99 blades out of 100. Knowing his failure would nullify the deal, he decided to resort to trickery. Vol took an ordinary sword and mixed it with the others, hoping that Cain would not notice the substitution. When Vol came to the god of war, he did not hope for success, but it was worth a try. At first, Cain did not notice the substitution and was so pleased with the smith's work that he immediately released Isha and Kurnus. Only when the two gods had managed to flee far away did Cain uncover the deception. Was it any wonder how furious the god of war became at such insolence? He roared in anger, calling Vol a liar and a pathetic deceiver. At that very moment, Cain rushed after Vol to make him answer for his vile deceit. As a result, monstrous wars began between the gods, in which the deities split into two camps. Some supported Cain, while others were on the side of the spouses and Vol. It seemed that these wars would rage for eternity. All of this was reflected upon the mortal Eldar, who were waging war among themselves. Only Asurion remained aside, painfully observing the outcomes of his hasty...
Cain was cheated and he wanted compensation, so the bloody-handed god took his revenge. And sued him. Something like that. Sued him.
And incorrect decisions. Finally, the war reached an impasse. The gods grew tired or began to forget why they were fighting, but they continued to march into battle nonetheless. Then Vol decided once again to take matters into his own hands. He reforged the very 100th sword, which he had failed to make for Cain. Vol imbued it with all of his soul and craftsmanship, making this blade the most powerful of all he had ever created. The smith named it Anaris, and armed with it, challenged Cain. The battle between the two gods was truly fierce and lengthy, and in the end, Vol could not overcome the god of war. Cain cruelly maimed the godsmith and chained him to his own anvil. Prior to this, Cain had also fought with Eldanesh, and tried in every way to lure the greatest of the Eldar to his side. Yet Eldanesh was little interested in the god's ambitions. In response to such insolence, Cain struck him with one of Vol's swords. When Ulthanesh learned of this, he could not remain on the sidelines. During the war, Eldanesh and Ulthanesh united their houses for victory over Cain. And so, after Vol's defeat, the falcon Faolchu, who also fought on the side of the god of smiths, picked up an aris and handed it to Eldanesh. Taking this great artifact in hand, Eldanesh
Artifact, yes, yes.
challenged the god of war. He fought bravely and for a long time, but Cain managed to prevail over him. Cain, in rage, literally crushed his body, and when he did so, blood began to drip from his hands. From this
God.
moment on, he was called Kala Mensha Cain, which literally translates as Cain the Bloody-Handed. And
Here
only
we
after a
go.
multitude of deaths did Asurion decide to intervene and stop the war. However, the prophecy of Lilith, which many had already forgotten, still loomed over the blood god. Many thousands of years later, when the Eldar created the greatest empire in the galaxy, darkness began to take over their minds. They became arrogant and proud. Their most corrupt
They became degenerates.
thoughts started to gather in the warp, taking the form of something dreadful. The result of the fall of millions of Eldar was the birth of the fourth god of the warp, Slaanesh, whose scream literally tore apart the souls and flesh of the Eldar. From this point began their downfall and the fall of their divine pantheon. Slaanesh cruelly killed all gods who stood in its path. From its hands fell Moriheg, Lilith, and even the supreme Asurion himself. Even Cain, the most powerful and mightiest god-warrior of all, fell in battle with the one who thirsts. Slaanesh shattered him into millions of pieces which became his avatars. Who would have thought that the prophecy of Lilith would be fulfilled in such a way? By the way, it is worth mentioning another legend that is widely spread among all Eldar. Once Slaanesh claimed that Isha, the goddess of fertility, was his property, to which Nurgle objected and snatched her from the claws of the young god of the war. Since then, Isha has been shackled next to Nurgle and his cauldron in which the god of plagues brews his diseases. He tests them on Isha, and if he is satisfied with the result, he pours the foul
This is like some Jabba the Hutt stuff. Huh. Interesting.
bubbling concoction into the void, right onto the realms of mortals. If he is not pleased with the outcome, he swallows the brew from the cauldron, then belches it back into the cauldron and starts over. The Eldar also believes that every time Nurgle tests a new disease on Isha, she secretly whispers to her children how to create a cure for this disease. Today's Eldar are but dying remnants of once a mighty race. In those ancient times, they rightfully considered themselves the dominant species, for there was no one who could compete with them. After the end
Except
of the
for
war in the
themselves.
heavens, in which the Necrons emerged victorious and resulted in the Old Ones being utterly eradicated, the Eldar were ready to fight these machines. However, the war with the 100 Tarn greatly weakened the Necrons, and they realized that they could not withstand another. The Necrons entered the Great Sleep to awaken when the time of the Eldar came to an end, for flesh is not eternal. And after the Necrons cloaked themselves in their tomb worlds for an entire 60 million years, the galaxy was almost completely emptied. No one was left who could threaten the peace, stability and development of the Eldar. As you have already understood, the history of this race is very long and convoluted. So convoluted, in fact, that nothing is known about their early evolution, first foray into space, and initial conquest. It is unclear what precisely this historical blackout is associated with, but many agree that events known as the Fall are to blame. Everything that was before is long forgotten and lost. Only myths and legends that have miraculously survived can briefly weave the tale of the Eldar's former glory. Millions of years ago, when the Eldar civilization was at the pinnacle of its power, the borders of their vast domains nearly spanned the entire galaxy. It was a wondrous time of peace and prosperity.
Aww.
The cities of the Eldar were a true utopia of beauty,
And they all wore funny hats.
personal pleasure, and cultural achievements. The history of these marvelous days is long forgotten and lost. Only
They kind of look like, what's her face? The banana hat lady from Elden Ring. Little bean head. Banana bean. Renala.
fragments in the form
They
of
are.
myths and legends have survived. It is unclear whether these tales are true or embellished fiction. Nevertheless, the Eldar craft world sacredly believe in them and strive to preserve even these scraps, describing the history of downfall. It is known for certain that the Eldar became a proud and arrogant people. They were confident in their absolute superiority over emerging new civilizations. Their superior technologies, culture, and infinite wealth only fueled the fire, feeding their already inflated ego. In their arrogance, none of them doubted that this would continue forever, yet doom came from where it was least expected. There were no craft worlds yet, no strict spiritual restrictions in the form of the path. There were only hundreds of paradisiacal worlds, where each of the Eldar pursued only their personal goals, indulging their whims and any desires. With vast resources and time at their disposal, they were able to create a myriad of truly magnificent things and uncover numerous secrets of the universe that have since been forgotten. The Eldar never feared death, for they knew it was not the end, but merely the beginning of their journey. Departing their mortal coil, the soul of an Eldar aspired to the warp, where it would peacefully dissolve to be reborn anew. The matter of fact is that the warp of that era was profoundly different from what it has become today.
Reincarnation. That's what they had? Back then when the warp wasn't so fucked up? Huh. Wow. And then Slaanesh came.
At that time, the warp was indifferent to the souls of the Eldar. This permissiveness increasingly poisoned the souls of all Eldar. The galaxy and its riches lay at their feet, and the Eldar came to believe that everything was created solely for them and their sake.
The good old days when afterlife wasn't
The entire
hell.
universe existed only so that the Eldar could endlessly indulge in every pleasure imaginable. The advanced technologies of the Eldar had long freed them from any physical labor. Society had long learned to provide everything needed without any effort on the part of the individual. As a result, the Eldar dedicated their
I always liked the thing in the Eldar myth cycle was that they had no concept of death until the war against the Necrons when the Satan, known as the Nightbringer, introduced it to them or something like that. Oh. Introduced death to them? Okay.
lives solely to the satisfaction of their
They were just reborn if they died, so death had no meaning. Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. They knew that they would just be reincarnated, so it didn't really bother them until they met the Nightbringer. Okay.
desires. In their insatiable curiosity, many Eldar succumbed to numerous hedonistic impulses and their darkest desires. Exotic cults began to emerge on all Eldar worlds. They dedicated themselves to some esoteric knowledge or sensual indulgence. The Eldar society began to fragment as these cults gained strength and influence. Those Eldar who were visited by visions of a terrible future in their dreams fled in horror to the very edge of their empire. They hoped to escape and founded their own colonies of the exiled. For other Eldar, unfortunately or fortunately, the truth was revealed too late, when their civilization had already fallen into the abyss of anarchy and madness. However, they managed to reject their most terrible vices and fled into open space aboard their enormous craft worlds. Nevertheless, a large portion of the Eldar were already ensnared in a maelstrom of the most monstrous and base desires, which soon escalated into an extravaganza of depravity. And so, brother fought against brother, and the streets of once beautiful and majestic cities turned into a veritable hell, where sadists and murderers lurked in the darkness, hunting for new victims, all to satiate their endless and abominable lust. In this mad whirlwind of perversions and cruelty, there was no mercy for anyone. Immorality, like a vile disease, seized almost the entire Eldar race, turning them into beasts that in their frenzied madness drenched the streets of cities in rivers of blood. But this was merely the beginning of the end, as the warp, like a sponge, absorbed and amplified all the most horrific thoughts and feelings of the Eldar's diseased imagination. Among the raging psychic energies, this depravity of the Eldar took form. In the warp, thoughts and emotions grow and expand, nourished by similar sensations until they acquire a semblance of their own consciousness. It is difficult to describe how vile and nauseating a mind the Eldar awoke. It became a shadow of themselves, of what they became when nobility and pride were discarded into the scrap heap of history, replaced by shamelessness, depravity and lust. This sequence of madness took hold of the Eldar for many years. During this time, hundreds of Eldar worlds blazed unceasingly, and the deafening screams of battles and perversions were only intermittently interrupted by loud laughter. Laughter of those who trampled over the fresh corpses of their kin.
Wow.
All this time, the warp continued to absorb and magnify everything the Eldar spewed out. And then came that scream, from which instantly hundreds of billions of Eldar cried out in agony in one.
That's crazy. Slaanesh screamed and then they all just... Wow.
Voice and immediately fell dead. In a single moment, an entire civilization, like a snuffed-out candle, was extinguished forever. No creature had been considered as terribly perverted as the new chaos god Slaanesh until that moment. And when the one who thirsts attained form and divine consciousness, she became the embodiment of the doom of the Eldar, and there was no one among the living who did not feel her claws in their chest. Slaanesh literally pulled the souls from the bodies of billions of Eldar, making her first breath, and, intoxicated by it, looked at the universe for the first time, laughing with a mad and deafening laugh. At this place arose...
Were the Chaos Gods like, oh god, not another one? The Chaos Gods probably hate the Eldar. They didn't expect a little porn baby to come out of the big black warp hole. And they were like, ah! Khorne really, really hates Slaanesh. Slaanesh kind of has a finger in all their pies. Disgusting. I'd expect no less from a degenerate.
The realm known as the Eye of Terror. However, for the Imperium of Mankind, this event had its advantages. The discovery of the Eye of Terror freed the galaxy from warp storm, allowing the resumption of interstellar flights for humans. Such is the story of the fall of a great people who, having no external enemies, perished, succumbing to their desires.
I will not thank Slaanesh, but that's pretty cool.
The surviving Eldar could not believe in their salvation after the catastrophe. As soon as they could grasp what really happened, they howled in grief and fear. The surviving colonies were scattered across the galaxy and completely lost any connection with each other. Those of
She, Slaanesh is like the annoying youngest sibling who always gets what they want. Oh, my little brother.
the Eldar who fled to the craft worlds decided to undergo a complete social reformation, to never again allow the repetition of such a fate. From that moment, every Eldar chooses for themselves one of the disciplines or so-called paths, and strictly follows only it. An Eldar will train and follow this path until they achieve true mastery of the chosen discipline. But even that is not the end, for when they fully master it, they choose a new path, and the training process almost starts anew. In this case, the old path is not forgotten, but instead complements the new one, and together they complement each other. The purpose of this system is that the Eldar, by following various paths, begin to comprehend different aspects of their character and
Slaanesh is kind of like a Gyaru that breaks something you like, then look at you and is like, teehee, you still love me? Oh gosh. No. Disgusting. Do not love Slaanesh.
search for their place and role in the cosmos. Ideally, Eldar who have reached
There is a meme that says the Emperor himself slept with Slaanesh. What heretical nonsense am I hearing? Disgusting.
1,000 years of age have already passed through many disciplines and learned to understand the universe in its most complex form. But such a way of life
will be
carries
punished
danger
for
for the
your
minds
teachings.
of the Eldar. Cases are known where some, following a single path, went too deep and began to lose their sanity. As a result, even upon completion, they could not leave the chosen path and continued to follow it to their death. For the Eldar, this is a terrible fate. They call those who have lost themselves upon the path of the warrior. It is believed that the exact number of paths is unknown, that each discipline has its further specializations. After the terrible cataclysm that spawned Slaanesh and the Eye of Terror, The society of the Eldar had to urgently adapt to a more terrifying and dangerous galaxy. Their central worlds were destroyed. The greater part of their race was devoured by the horrible being, and every Eldar who dies in the future has their soul consumed by the one who thirsts. But the Eldar would not be one of the greatest races in
No more reincarnation. Rib.
space without enough survival drive.
They're sterile and their souls are hunted by Slaanesh. They can't reproduce? They can't reproduce? No, they are not sterile. Oh, okay. They aren't sterile. The birth rate is low. Oh, okay. I was like, Slaanesh chopped off their peepees? God, give them a break. Just kidding. Xeno scum.
Even before the fall, the most perceptive among them gathered their
Make babies.
followers and set out for the most distant worlds of their empire. The rest of their kind considered them fanatics who rejected the benefits of their civilization in the name of asceticism and modesty. They were called exodites or exiles, and most Eldar hurried to forget their outcast brothers. Many exodites perished during their resettlement. Even more died from clashes with orcs and other war.
It is a fairly complicated process for an Eldar to have a child not like humans. I wonder what that looks like. Wait, do I want to know what that looks like? That sounds nasty.
Warring races of the galaxy. However, they still achieved their goal and found a new home on the wild and extremely dangerous planets of the outer space frontier.
I wonder if humans can reproduce with Eldar. You are speaking such heretical things. But, good question. There are human Eldar hybrids, so yes. Living a life of sin. Hard to say no to a dark Eldar goth mommy. I'm concerned. Most have Eldar with the dark Eldar. Oh no! No! God, what a mistake.
For a race long
We should have just wiped him out the second they revived Gilliman. Wipe him out. Thanks. You've served your purpose. Goodbye.
unaccustomed to hard work, it was difficult to adapt to
Hi,
life in
Grumpy.
the wild, but over time they relearned how to hunt, build homes,
I feel like I need to report this chat to the chapter master. Yeah. Dink donk. Chaplain. Yeah, there used to be Eldar Space Marines. Strike that from the record.
make tools from primitive resources, and tame wild creatures, which they called dragons. These lizards are similar to the ancient reptiles of Terra, classified by size and the dangers they pose. Exodites live in tribes, and all tribes are subject to the supreme king or queen of the planet. Wars
Exodites.
between tribes are rare.
They ride dinosaurs. What? That's cool.
However, there are still minor clashes between young warriors, which can sometimes even result in death. Exodites have learned to protect their souls from being consumed by Slaanesh.
Oh, smart.
Each exodite carries a spirit stone with them, into which their spirit is enclosed after death. These stones are taken to an underground repository, where during a special ritual they are smashed, and the soul moves to the so-called world spirit, the heart of the planet.
So
A
smart.
similar mechanism exists for the Elder Craft worlds, but more on that later. Exodites still live on their secluded worlds today, fending off orcs, tyrannids, and even the forces of Imperial Knights.
Exodite's a super cool animation, actually. I recommend it. They have an animation for it, too? Nice. We gotta watch that.
The rest of the Elder communicate little with the exiles, however. In times of special need, they still
3
come to the aid
episodes?
of their more savage kin.
Awesome.
And now it is time to speak about the main representatives of the remnants of the Eldar race, namely the Eldar.
This dude looked goofy. What the? What does the yin yang symbolize? Does that symbolize the warp? I don't remember. Oh, that's okay. Interesting. Maybe YouTube will know. Thank you, YouTube. If you know, you know. Please help.
Eldar of the Craft Worlds, or as they call themselves, Asuriani. This is the last bastion of Eldar culture in the form it had during their dominance over the galaxy. Just before the fall, the foresighted Eldar fled the decaying empire on huge ships, later named craft worlds. Many of them were caught in the wave of the warp after the birth of Slanesh and were destroyed. However, a significant portion remained intact. Craft worlds are so vast that they contain entire cities and forests, as well as hundreds of thousands or even millions of inhabitants. Within each ship is the most vital structure for the survival of the Eldar, the Infinity Circuit. It contains the soul stones of deceased Eldar, which fuel the ships while their souls slowly dissolve into oblivion. The most famous of these are 5 craft worlds. Ulthui is a craft world caught in the outer orbit of the Eye of Terror and forced to eternally patrol the ruins of their former homeland. This world is the most experienced in battling the spawn of chaos, as well as the most skilled in using psychic powers, thanks to its proximity to the greatest warp storm. Rumors on other craft worlds have long suggested that the Eldar of Ulthui were tainted by the power of the Eye of Terror, cursing themselves in the process. Despite this, they consider themselves guardians, bearing the eternal watch over the wreckage of their former empire. Naturally, the seers of Ulthui harness the limitless power of the Eye of Terror to enhance their psychic abilities. This helps them to foresee upcoming events with greater accuracy than Eldar from other craft worlds. They use these abilities for both survival and to combat the forces of chaos constantly emerging from the Eye of Terror. Among all craft worlds, Ulthui interferes more in the affairs and fate of other races when the situation demands it. At first glance, it may seem that the Eldar are heading into a seemingly unrelated minor battle, but in reality the outcomes of these wars have a significant impact on the fate of Ulthui. Thanks to such unexpected appearances and raids, the Eldar craft world Ulthui has gained a reputation for being unpredictable madcaps. However, only the seers of the Eldar know the reasons for these raids, for they understand it's better to stop a small pebble than to battle a monstrous avalanche of consequences. The Imperium of Mankind, due to its vast territories and significant influence in the galaxy, is a primary target for manipulations by the Eldar. To the seers of the Eldar, humans are merely expendable material, which they gladly use to achieve goals for the benefit of their people. A similar opinion is held by the Eldar of craftworld Bieltan. However, this bellicose, bitterness-consumed people wage war against Xenos, not only with humans but with all races except their brethren. The inhabitants of Bieltan set out to resurrect the former empire of the Eldar, and they put forth more effort toward this goal than the rest. They believe that a new empire washed in the blood of Eldar and alien races can only rise from the crucible of war. Due to this, the number of exarchs on Bieltan is significantly higher than on other craft worlds.
They couldn't face the Eye of Terror with their so-called high tech, but one planet with humans with flashlights could. Arcadia!
For the Eldar of Bieltan prioritize the path of the warrior above all others. According to their beliefs, when the time comes for the rebirth of the Eldar's former glory, the planets of the Exodites will serve as a staging ground for further conquests. Therefore, the paradise worlds of the Exodites are under constant control of Bieltan. The Eldar of this craft world are the reason for distrust from other races towards the entire Eldar civilization. There are known instances when, due to their hatred of orcs, the Eldar of Bieltan came to aid Imperial forces. But after the complete extermination of the Greenskins, they immediately attacked the humans, who were their allies. Such widespread betrayals have bred distrust toward all Eldar. Nonetheless, the inhabitants of Bieltan are indifferent to this, as all is done for the resurrection of their former empire. The Eldar craft world. Alaitok, like their brethren from Bieltan, also shun any contact with the outside world. Aboard their craft world, there is complete rigor and adherence to the Eldar paths. However, not all can endure the weight of strict discipline, and some succumb to their thirst for adventure. Some
Bieltan are assholes. I'm more of a Ulthui Landon fan. Yeah, Ulthui sounded pretty cool. But we can't give them any leeway. Once we say one is okay, that means everyone's gonna start thinking all of them are okay. It's not okay. Kill all elves.
Purposely err to be exiled, others look for loopholes and simply flee. But even despite exile and escape, they remain loyal to their home and return to defend their craft world if needed. Yet, such renegades also pose a threat to their home. It is from these star wanderers of Alaitok, as they call themselves,
No
that the
Xenos
Imperium
will
was
be
able to obtain all
spared.
known information about the Eldar today, certainly not without the help of the Inquisition. The next craft world, Saim Han, is considered willful and very warlike. Generally, the Eldar of this craft world were among the first to flee their home planets in anticipation of the fall. The fierce warriors of Saim Han
Gilliman gets an Eldar girlfriend, though. Disgusting. We should have left him dead.
value honor above their
Thank
counterparts
you for
from
the
other
hydrate.
craft worlds, hence other Eldar deem their customs barbaric. Their pride, along with legendary bravery, has led
So you know what? When they were resurrecting Gilman, they probably implanted his brain with debauchery. He's been tainted.
to frequent unjust wars, even against soldiers of other craft worlds. Saim Han is famed for its wild riders. These are warriors who rush into the thick of battle on their swift jet bike. But they are best known as excellent specialists in fast and lightning raids. Additionally,
They're
The
kind of like the white space marines with their bikes.
wild riders have a significant influence on Saim Han. In essence, all warriors of the craft world, even the
They trick me, they betray me. I fed up with this world.
Seers, consider themselves part of one of the Wild Riders clans. The Elder of Saim Han periodically organize ritual races, the goal of which is to capture a scorpion snake during its dash. The leaders of the Wild Riders army are the Aspect Shining Spears warriors. The largest number of these fearless warriors is found precisely on Saim Han.
Xenos trickery.
It should also be noted that all inhabitants of Saim Han are strict adherents of Blood Brotherhood, and they always strive to repay all their debts. Rumors say that during the Blood Brotherhood ceremony they even drink each other's blood from slashed wrists. However, such brotherhood both unites and creates additional problems in various situations. For instance, during a war, each clan decides for itself whether it wants to participate in the war or not. Such decisions lead to various conflicts among the clans.
That's weird. Drink from my wrist, brother. Gross.
Of the Wild Riders, but it usually does not escalate into a
I
full-scale war.
expect no less.
The conflict is limited to only the champions of the clans participating in the battle. And although, according to the rules, it is enough to merely draw the blood of the opponent to win, fatal outcomes do occur sometimes. It is for this reason that the warriors of Craftworld Saim Han are considered by other Eldar to be savages and barbarians. Iyanden is a craft world that was once one of the most majestic ships of the Eldar. However, twists of fate led Iyanden to encounter the fleet of the Tyranids,
Uh-oh.
during which this world suffered greatly.
Oof.
Much of it is now in ruins, and there are very few inhabitants left. But the survivors have devised a way to replenish their losses. They possess the largest army of ghostly constructs, robots made from
Okay, so this is what we do. We get little lights. When the Tyranids come out of wherever the fuck they come out of, we get those lights like they have on the plane, like tarmacs. We're like, woo, 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 send them this way, woo, woo, send them to the elves. The Tyranids can get the job done.
wraithbone, which are controlled by the souls of deceased Eldar from the inserted spirit stones. Standing apart from the rest
Yeah,
are the
landing lights. Yep.
Eldari Corsairs, exiles
You joke, but the Imperium did kind of do that. Did it once, we can do it again!
or those lost on the path who chose the way of raiding and voyages. Their entire life is built on raids, theft and robbery of the ships of other beings, including humans. Rarely do Corsairs form large gangs, however. There exist entire cosmic fleets under the command of princes or princesses, and such a force is to be reckoned with. Quite recently, a new faction has begun to march across the galaxy, the Inari. They are followers of a yet unborn god whose fate is to defeat Slaanesh.
Oh.
But the complexity lies in the fact that the Inari follow ancient prophecies, which state that their god Aeneid will awaken and defeat the Desirous One only when the last of the Eldar perishes.
Oh no.
Their sleeping god is the god of the dead. He, like Slaanesh, feeds on the souls of deceased Eldar, and it is from them that he draws the strength for his awakening. However, the Inari do not plan to destroy their race. They are capable of keeping the souls of the deceased within themselves.
So is that real then, or are they just speculating that there's a god of death? There really is a god of death. They woke up. Oh, the god of death woke up? Does that mean the Eldar are dead? All the other gods are real as well. Okay, so it isn't just some hoopla. It's thanks to that Gilliman resurrected. Oh, the god of death. Oh, so these are the good Eldar? Kind of. It's like half awake. Oh, okay. A little sleepy. These are a good faction of Eldar. Good. Less bad. Question mark. They must all perish. We must cripple Slaanesh. We can't rely on these elves. Humanity has to find a way. Don't say her name so loud. Slutty-nesh.
Just as spirit stones do. With this, they want to starve Slaanesh to death, which may take a lot of time.
Yeah,
Yet the unborn
they have the
god
right.
is patient. Desperate Eldar from both craft worlds and their dark kin from the city of Komorra, of whom it is worth speaking separately, watch the new faction with interest and hope. Many Eldar, both light and dark, are joining their crusade. Now, thanks to the split of Craftworld Biel-Tan, the Inari have managed to summon the avatar of their god, Incarn. And together with the High Priestess Ivrain,
Pretty
the
boy.
army of the Inari follows ancient prescriptions, destroying any resistance. As I said earlier, there are also the Dark Eldar. However, their culture is so different from their kin that I will tell about them in separate briefs. But besides them, there exists yet another faction of the Eldar. The most mysterious, eternally hiding the faces of its followers
clowns!
under theatrical masks.
Hong Kong.
Servants of the Laughing God, the last survivor of the Elder Pantheon, they carry out their mysterious dance across the void of the galaxy, pursuing plans known only to them.
Thank you, AI David Attenborough. The Harlequins are cool. Add that to the list. I learned more about Eldar scum. Eldar Smelldar. Seems like they're trying to, I don't know, do good things, I suppose. For their own benefit, of course. We're just using each other. Surface level friendships here.